Why am I talking to you today? It's basically because I am absolutely convinced that entrepreneurship carries the power to change the world for the better. Of course, also for the worse, but that's not what we are targeting. All of us here are targeting to change the world for the better, and entrepreneurship is a great way to do that. And therefore, with this lecture, I try to inspire you to become entrepreneurs. And in order to do that, we are focusing on some hard facts which are softly wrapped, I would put it this way. So I'm not going very deep into things, but rather I like to follow this Saint-Exupéry quote, which basically says, I inspire people and don't tell them step by step what to do. And this is exactly what's going to happen today. I'm not telling you step by step how to start and how to succeed, but I will tell you the basic elements so that you can later go and do some research and you know where to research and what to research. And with that, I'm very, very sure that smart people like your good selves, you'll be able to become successful entrepreneurs. That's what it's all about. And so who am I? I am what is called a serial entrepreneur, and to get that title, you just have to do it again and again and again. And you can fail, by the way, in between. You're still called a serial entrepreneur. Fortunately, I didn't fail all of the time. So I've co-founded 5 startups, invested in many others, but I was always not only financially involved, but also operationally. So I had always some role in the startups that I took, be it chairman, CEO, COO, you have it, all the C's titles. I tried them out. There's one specific event in my life that really changed it, and that made me start going into the startup world. And that was when in 1999, 1st of January, I arrived very nicely. When in 1999, I went to California on behalf of Infineon, which was just spun off of Siemens Corporation as its semiconductor arm. And in California, we started an internal startup. So it was not the proper one, venture capital finance. It was one internally, but it was still a startup. We started with some 10 plus people and very minuscule business. And we turned it into a several $100 million business and hundreds of people employed in that unit of Infineon. And it took us a few years, but literally only a few years. So in 2001, then this startup did its job. The startup bug severely bit me, and I left Infineon and went to my first real startup, in the sense that it was venture financed. It was a spin-off of Dresden University, and this is where it all started for me. This first startup we then sold 1.5 years later to Philips Semiconductor. Then I did the next thing, which was in London, and so on and so on. But this event was really what turned me into a serial entrepreneur, who I am today. Now I'm actually on the last leg of my career. You all see I'm not that young anymore. I'm leading the Grow platform at Robert Bosch GmbH. Bosch is one of the largest German companies, and I'm running and leading a unit which is with global presence and where we are building new businesses for Bosch. And before all of this, I worked for Siemens, and I did a PhD at the University of Hanover in electrical engineering. And before that, I did a master in physics also at Hanover University. So this talk is not about me, but it's about how to start a business and succeed. And the how-to, what can I tell you? There is no to-do list. There doesn't exist a to-do list. And on the next slide, I will explain why. So the key element is small iterations, try it out, and dare to fail with each iteration. So that when you fail on one iteration, no problem, backtrack and try the next one. So that's the basic principle of the how-to. And starting a business basically is about spotting an opportunity. I'll get into that, what you need to look for. Building a team, which is the most fundamental part of succeeding in starting a business. Of course, then the usual: develop a product, design a business plan, all those things I'm sure you know and you've heard many, many times before. And in order to succeed, which is the last part of the title of this talk, what do you need to look out for? And really, really, the number one priority is you need a high performance team. You need to form a team which is outstanding, and I will tell you in a little while what makes for an outstanding team. And this is where we go. So why is it about? Why do I say there's not a step-by-step list of to-dos that you can follow in order to start and be successful with a startup? This is because it's complex. It's not complicated, but it's complex. And many of you might have seen the Stacy matrix before. This is the version for software development, but never mind. The principle is the same when it comes to starting and running a business. So you will not succeed in trying to turn this from complex to complicated. It is complex because there's so many elements and they're all interacting with one another. And that's the definition of complex. You might accidentally and hopefully not intentionally move into the chaotic area. And then my best advice is backtrack and make it complex again. That's bad enough. But in any case, if you end up for some time in the chaotic or in the you stay within complex, the only way to deal with such situations is to apply a process like Scrum or any other Imperial iterative process, which allows you to learn very fast and adapt your steps. So that is important. Now, the first thing you want to do when you want to start a business is you need to find an opportunity. And the best opportunities are those in markets that show cracks. Because if a market is occupied by giants, it is super hard. And why, I will show you again in just a second. So how do you find a market that has cracks? And what makes for cracks in the market? As a general concept, I'd like to show you this here. And of course, this looks a little bit funny. What is this? Two weird S-curves, right? Well, this is how technology and business typically develops. It starts slowly because you're building the foundation, you're still in the learning mode, and things start to improve. And then all of a sudden, the stars line up. You solved all the major problems in terms of business. You are addressing a very large customer base with a product which is differentiated enough, and then business takes off. Now, there's always history for everything. That means there is an existing product and an existing business model. And if it is only that your customer or customers or potential customers today are solving the problem you would like to address themselves. In many cases, actually, the fiercest competitor is that people found some sort of a solution to the problem that you're addressing or to the opportunity you would like to bring to them. They are somehow dealing with it. So internal competition in your customer's mind, or if it's an organization, if you're selling to a company, then internal competition in the organization of your customer is your fiercest competitor, because it means you have to change behavior, and nothing is more complex and difficult than changing people's behavior. What it needs is a huge increase in customer value that people then grudgingly concede, yeah, your product is better. I should use I give up with doing it the old way. I do it in the new way. And this delta in customer value is very important. It needs to be large enough, and it needs to be, the rule of thumb is at least 10 times for a physical product and 100 times for a software product. And this sounds very hard, but hey, it has been done again over and over again. So obviously it is possible. So this is no reason to give up. And here is an example where all of this came together. Look at the automobile market. Car manufacturers were a bunch of a relatively small group worldwide of companies that controlled the market. It was impossible as an upstart to get into that. And that is because simply the building a car is so difficult in itself as a technical challenge. Plus, on top of it, customers just wanted those brands that they knew. So really difficult to get into. But then what happened was a lot of things came together. Climate crisis put the emphasis on how dirty the good old car is, and that electrical vehicles actually might be better for the environment. And the advances in battery technology have been immense. So if you look here at this chart at the left, you see that the price for a battery pack came down by almost a factor of 10. And this was 2019, so it actually came down meanwhile 2020, 2021 by literally a factor of 10. So that is in itself something that can get a market going, but that's not enough. You also need to be able to pack enough power, energy into a battery that it still fits into a car. By the way, the very first car of Ferdinand Porsche was an electrical car built 100 years ago. But that was with lead acid down here. And that stuff, as we all know, is heavy and can't store enough energy. So that didn't work out. He was a little bit too early. Nowadays, there are again electrical Porsches. So the advancements in energy density, in both in terms of weight, so energy density per weight unit, and energy density per volume, metric volume, are enormous, and all of that comes together so that overall you can today pack much more energy into the same weight and volume, and you get it at a tenth of the price of just 10 years ago. And that enabled now the electrical car. And all of a sudden, what happened to the car market? Oops, where is it? Here, this happened. There are cracks. And this is Tesla, the green one, that is Tesla. It managed to get through. By the way, this morning I read that Tesla in the last quarter made 2.2 billion in profits. So first people said, ha, they don't have the quality, nobody will buy it. Didn't work out. Then people said they will never be profitable. Didn't work out. Here we go. Opportunities arise, and the smart ones can take advantage of it. Doesn't always need to be as big as Tesla, but then this is an inspirational lecture, and I want to give you big inspiration, and Tesla definitely is one. So let's go back to this model. So what makes then, if you found your market, you're seeing the opportunity, there is a crack, and what makes for a great idea? So in line with what I've said, that very often you need to change customers' behavior, and you need to very often even create the demand in a customer. I mean, just think of the Apple Watch. Who had a demand for such type of watch? Nobody. And initially it looked like a failure, but then they twisted it and developed it to the point where now there's actually a demand. And the customers have changed their behavior. They're putting their expensive watches, which basically were an accessory to show status, into the drawers, and people are using their Apple Watch. So, and the next thing you need to look out for is, and I've mentioned this already, is that the customer benefit is at least 10 times of what it was before. And what constitutes customer benefit can actually be sometimes very surprising. and your customer can actually be someone very different from what you're assuming. But on that, I will have separate slides. So bear with me for a few more minutes, and then I'll get deeper into that. Also, very important topic is when you create your product idea, you have to think about, is this something that customers actually would be willing to pay for? Or again, who is the customer or the customer group that would be willing to pay for what I can do with my product or the technology that I have? So we'll get into that also in a second. And now we're getting a little bit technical, but I can't help it. And you're smart people, so you will be able to figure this out. It needs to be a scalable and profitable business model, and what that means also again in a few slides. So the idea I've already spoken about. You need to come up obviously with some idea. And while the idea obviously is important, there is this misconception, or I would actually call it the fallacy, where people assume, oh, you need to have this super ingenious idea. I'm not a genius. How can I ever come up with anything that is suited to found a large business on? I'm not a genius. To be honest, it doesn't take genius. Not at all. And you can be a genius, it doesn't hurt, but you don't need to be a genius to come up with the right idea. And also, the idea is really, it leads people astray to focus too much on the idea. Once you have a first clue of what might be good, what you should focus on is not trying to develop this idea further, and trying to refine it and find out yourself if your idea is great. No, form a team. Form a team that is high performance enough that together with your team, you can actually develop your idea to the point that you can then start a business on it. And so what kind of team are you looking for? Well, you're looking for a high performance team, obviously. And what makes for a high performance team? Yeah, sure. You need to have some competences and the right competencies, right? You better have someone who can write a business plan and understands finances and knows, what a gross margin is and what the cost of product is and the cost of sales and the long-term customer value versus customer acquisition cost. All these things, someone needs to know that. And you also need someone who actually can build that technical goodie that you're trying to sell, and who can write software and so on. All of these things obviously are necessary. But now we're getting into the soft factors of the team. So these are the hard factors, but it's only one. And then there are four soft factors. And one is that you work together in what I call the transparent structure, which is nothing but everyone knows who's working on what, and everyone is always informed on the basics. Everyone interacts with everyone so that you know where you can contribute and where your teammate actually might need help. And that is best done by organizing yourself in some sort of agile working culture. I've spoken about Scrum and these things before. So very important that you have this. The next topic is even more soft, but even more important. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to concede if things don't work and then change your ways. And that is damn hard, but it's absolutely important. It doesn't work without that. And this is, in my experience, the biggest challenge. People are typically too proud to concede that the initial idea or what they were working on didn't work out. You have to be able to admit failure to yourselves and to your team and then backtrack. But while you have to be able to admit failure, and now I'm skipping the team camp, going to the psychological safety element, your team also needs to be forgiving. Your team needs to say, yeah, sure, great, you tried it. Now we know what doesn't work. We'll take note of it so that we don't go trap into that, that we don't fall into that trap again. And that's it. Forgiven. This is psychological safety, fundamentally important, because otherwise nobody dares to venture into something where the outcome isn't known. And then obviously you need to take good care of another as a team. You need to have outings together, and Corona is not helping. You need to have outings together. You need to see another. You need to take care of another. Very important. And if you want to read more, go to reworkwithgoogle.com. So Google researched this topic to a great depth. There is a project called Aristotle. If you Google Aristotle, you'll end up what I'm showing here. And I can only recommend this as the first step. When you think, I want to start a venture, I have this vague idea, go here first. Build a great team. This is the most important thing. So then, having spoken about the team quite a bit, you also want to build a product. And you've seen these two S-curves. And here I've trivialized it a little bit. So the lower S-curve, the existing product, is now just a line, but you can work with that level of abstraction. Your new product is still an S-curve. And what is important, is that you need to realize that it takes some activation energy. You're all mechanical engineers. You know what activation energy means. If you want to get the fuel burning, you need to put some energy into it, and then only it will start burning and give back energy. And this activation energy actually is also a concept that applies to selling stuff in the market. And there is a median activation threshold, which basically means if you cross that, you will get enough customers that your business will take off exponentially. And that you need to hit. And the rule of thumb is this factor of 10, which was, to my knowledge, invented by Andy Grove, the founder and first CEO of Intel. And since then, this has been a staple of knowledge in the venture capital and startup world, and it's true. What can I say? The other element that you need to think about is you need a cost structure where this is only this holds also for software, by the way. You would think this only holds for physical product, but it also holds for software. You can't have a product cost that goes down only linearly. And why not? Because you will always have big competitors, and big companies are really good at tilting this curve a little more than you. And even if it's only because they're willing to take the losses, which you can't afford, and later they would tilt it up again once you've left the market. So you need a cost structure, and you need to design your product such that as the volume goes up, the cost goes down very steeply. This is also an important element. And this is now the most technical I'm getting. I stop here, and now we are going to go back to some more high-level thoughts. So how do you know that you're on track? This is important, right? Because you're working hard and you're into your venture, but how do you know that what you're doing actually is leading to something that eventually will result in your business being successful? And my advice is only look at customers. Customer traction. So the feedback initially, the feedback from customers later, the ability to sell something to customers, which actually doesn't need to be the product at first. It can be either a very simple first version of the product, or it can even be, for example, a development tool, which they then use. And while you are finishing your product, they start designing, for example, their software based on your development tool. And then once they've developed their software, you can then develop and you can then hand them the product on which they can port their software, and then they can get going. So this overlap of you are developing something, the customer is engaging with you, it's very important. Don't wait until your product is perfect and then you go and see the customer the first time. No. That will fail. That's not good. You need to engage very early. And through that, you will be able to collect feedback that is invaluable, in that it shows you which path of the many. You have always many choices, and which path is the right one. And that's the one where you get the best customer interaction and traction. So if they pay you for trials, that's great. If a customer engaged in a paid trial and then gives you an order, fantastic. If you get repeat orders, you know you're there. Repeat orders from even if it's even many customers, very strong indication that you're on the right way. And the breakthrough obviously is when you're exponentially growing and you're even making profits. But this is that's out there. But it's always important to keep to look across the horizon. Where do we really want to go? Because otherwise you get stuck in your nitty-gritty details, and you have to, when you are hiking long distances, you always don't only look at the paths in front of you. You have to, otherwise you might stumble. But then also you have to look way out so that you find the right path. It's the same here. So how do you recognize that you are off track? What indicators point to impending failure? And that's equally important to know. And one that I came across very, very often is what I call featureism, which is this, oh, you know, it's our product isn't good enough yet. We need more features, more features, more features. Customers are not biting it, biting the bait. We need to give them more features. Never. This can't be. If you need to add feature by feature on feature, you're just doing the wrong product. Something's wrong. This won't cut it. And here is a very prominent example of that, and that is Google versus Yahoo. I don't know if any one of you, you're all very young, if any one of you remembers Yahoo. When web search came up, there was basically one common assumption, and that was the person in front of the screen doing research is your customer. So you have to entertain them, you have to lead them, link them to some advertisement or some that they buy something. You as the browser, you are owning the customer, and you need to make money of that customer. And what Google did was they've turned it around. They recognized that the person sitting in front of the screen is a product, and the customer is the company buying the information about the person sitting in front of the screen. It was a fundamental breakthrough. People these days take it for granted, obviously, but it was really an incredible breakthrough, and this is why Google won and why all the others more or less disappear. There are still some other search engines, but not many, as we all know. And therefore, you know, it's not about adding features. This is what Yahoo did. They've added more content and more content and more links, and you were overwhelmed when you went onto the website and all you wanted to do is some research, but they bombarded you with all sorts of stuff. The features didn't cut it for them. They lost out nevertheless. The other common topic that you hear from startups that are struggling getting off the ground is what I call price anxiety. They basically go, yeah, our customers are not buying. I guess it's too expensive. And of course, if you ask your customer, is our pricing right? They will always say it's too expensive, really. I mean, honestly, an iPhone is it's too expensive. Still, we buy it, right? Why? Well, it gives us things that we who buy iPhones think we don't get otherwise. Some people, or many more people, think that they can do without it for good reasons, but then they're not the customer. But it's not about the price at the end of the day. There are other reasons. And if you encounter this, the featureism, the price anxiety, then do what Google did and think about who it really is your customer. And once you understood who your customer is, what is the value that she seeks? And it's not about what you think the value is. It's really understanding what your customer thinks, what the value is. Okay, and with that, some final words of encouragement, and then we are done. And again, I've said it already, and really, the team makes the difference. And here are two statements that I literally believe are true. And that is, a high-performance team will even turn a mediocre business model into success, because they will be able to modify it and quickly enough so that the mediocre business model turns into a great business model, and then it will be successful. But it's more important to have a high performance team than to have the best business model in the world, because the other way around, it doesn't work. A mediocre team will not be able to even turn a top business model into success. This is my experience. And then the second experience might sound even more astonishing, but it's also proven and true. And that is, you can have average talented people that still form a high performance team, and they outperform teams made up of much more talented people. And that is because the interaction, the team, the 5 elements that I've shown you earlier, they make all the difference. If you have a team that is functioning super well, then the combined intelligence of the people effectively, in that when you compare the output of that team with the output of other teams, this will be much higher, much more valuable, and much more successful. And so what does that means? At the end of the day, all of you, because you're at least average. I guess most of you are absolutely way better than average. And therefore, all of you are suited to form a team that can build successful startups. And that's what I said initially. I want to turn you into entrepreneurs, because I think all of you have it. You can do it. And the only thing that it takes for you to succeed is you need to dare to fail. Because if you don't dare to fail, obviously you can't succeed. And that's the last slide in my presentation. And I thank you for listening. And I'm very curious, very curious to hear your questions. And here we go.